Started off as an on-your-side investigation on behalf of a viewer has now turned into a statewide inquiry.
CBS 7's Matt Riss continues to search for answers on behalf of Sharyland customers. Tonight we've uncovered that it wasn't Sharyland who asked to hike the rates, but the PUC and special interest groups. Matt?
Jay Tatum, it's here in the businesses and homes of West Texas where residents are choosing to stay in the dark as electricity costs rise. And up until now, we've thought Sharyland Utilities was to blame. But after taking a closer look at the testimony, we discovered that Sharyland actually warned the states that residents would be shocked, a warning that went unnoticed. The pinch of electricity bills doubling and tripling hit hard in the farmlands of West Texas.
If you have to water and you use electricity, and your bills have doubled, I mean, you can't afford to do that.
Residents so fed up, they took action. Community meetings held as the shock set in.
So why is one entity, one company being given a 3 times rate than anybody else?
Those questions lead back to a 2013 rate case. It's a trial of sorts where the utility company appeared before the Public Utility Commission. The commission signed off on an increase in charges for residential customers while decreasing the rate for industry customers like oilfield companies. But when you take a closer look, it's not that Sharyland is actually getting more money, but more of the burden was placed on consumers. We pointed this out to Carol Bajitsky. She's worked in the energy utility sector since 1978, part of that time at the Utility Commission. She now heads up a group which fights for lower-income consumers in electric cases.
The Public Utility Commission, as far as I'm concerned, has dropped the ball because this case has raised rates in a way that just doesn't seem to be just and reasonable, and that's what a rate case is about.
All these meetings happened in Austin, and who decided the rates? Up until now, we've only known that Sharyland, oil companies, and special interest groups appeared before the council. In May 2013 testimony, Sharyland's own staff said, quote, moving immediately to fully allocated cost of service rates is in our view clearly undesirable. In particular, residential customers would experience significant rate shock, while large primary customers would receive large rate decreases. Months later, in November, Sharyland warned the PUC of how rates would impact customers, suggesting to leave rates, quote, as close to existing delivery rates as possible.
Rate case process is an interesting process because it favors the people who are participating in it.
Carol says the outcome of this case is unusual, but not unexpected.
It shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that the parties that are best represented in rate cases at the Public Utility Commission are usually the industrial customers because they have the money to hire the lawyers and like pay big bucks to get expert witnesses to come in and present their case for them.
Do you think this process was fair to consumers here?
The process was definitely not fair to consumers. All you have to do is look at the list of parties that intervened in the case. There is the utility, a bunch of industrial customers, and no one else.
There is an organization funded by a state appropriation, the Texas Office of Public Utility Counsel, or OPUC.
That's right.
They are charged with representing small businesses and the average consumer in these complicated cases, but they did not intervene on behalf of customers.
It's just too bad that in the rate proceeding before the commission where these rates were set, there was no one representing consumers, and it's obvious looking at the outcome of the case.
We set out to find why the state-funded OPUC did not represent the very people that are now so upset. We went to their Austin office, where we sat down with media spokesperson Michelle Gregg.
We are an independent state agency. We were created about 32 years ago specifically to represent the interests of residential and small commercial consumer classes.
Can you say why you guys weren't involved in that rate case?
That's a decision made by the public council, and the public council that made that decision is no longer our public council. So I don't know why that decision was made. I do know that our current public council is very, very concerned about what's happening with Sharyland customers, and so that has been a priority for us.
Have you guys recognized that perhaps things now for these folks might be different had OPUC been involved back in 2013?
It's hard for us to tell because that's a past case, and we'd have to go in and look at all the facts of it.
To find the answer ourselves, we've sent a public information request asking for copies of all internal communication involving Sharyland leading up to the rate case. We have not yet heard back. We took that same question to one of 3 public utility commissioners, the PUC, which oversaw the rate case.
The OPUC was not there speaking on behalf of consumers in this rate case. Does that raise any flags for you?
You know, I think it probably could have looked different had they been involved, and I hope that they're involved next time.
Is there anything you can do to ensure that in a case like this that could impact consumers so much that in the future OPUC is always involved?
That's a great question, and what I do know about this community going forward, which has been really inspiring, is that these folks are at the table and they're going to have their voices heard. But
is there anything that could be done to prevent them from getting in this situation in the future? Of feeling like that they weren't represented and OPUC wasn't at the table during their rate case. Is there anything that could be done to prevent that in the future?
You know, we're always looking at better ways to communicate with the communities that we serve, and so we'll continue to look into that because it is an open process.
We brought what we found in our CBS 7 investigation to state lawmakers. They and the governor's office alone have the power to ask for changes to PUC or OPUC policy.
And the process has not been satisfactory at all.
But Senator Seliger fell short when asked if his office would help ensure that customers never went unrepresented in future cases.
It just really seems like the process is really not slanted in favor of consumers, and that
I've never thought the process was slanted in favor of consumers. That's why we have an Office of Public Utility Counsel, which is supposed to represent consumers.
Who wasn't involved in this 2013 rate case.
And there's a question, why weren't they involved? That's what they do. If they don't do that, what do they do?
After our interview, we emailed Senator Seliger's office twice, asking if they would draft a letter or make a change in light of what we found. Those emails were not returned. In the meantime, Representative Tom Craddock's office declined to interview, saying only his office was looking into the customers' concerns. There is no mechanism to ensure that the Office of Public Utility Counsel participates in every rate case. Even still, the PUC stands by its process.
Do you think this process was fair to these folks?
I do think it's a very fair and transparent process. Absolutely.
Even given that OPUC wasn't at the table, do you think it was fair to these folks?
I do think it's a fair and open process. What we need to look at now is, are the results sustainable?
Jay Tatum, tonight, lawmakers and officials are all saying the right things, but so far, no official commitment to make any changes. That's why I'm asking anyone impacted or anyone who just has a close eye on this story to please contact your local, state, and even federal representatives and voice your concerns.
Matt,
Tatum?
let me ask you a question. Will people see relief anytime soon?
Tatum, that's difficult to say. What we do know is that the PUC has launched a full investigation as a result of our questions. That investigation is expected to wrap up by July. The next thing folks can look to is a 2016 rate case. One thing that could happen in this investigation is moving that rate case forward. Again, these are all good reasons to reach out to your local and state representatives. Tonight, I'm live in Howard County. On your side, Matt Rist, CBS 7 News.